This is the South African National Rally Championship, proudly brought to you by Dunlop, Ford Performance, Toyota and Volkswagen Motorsport. The final rally of the 2016 season was the Hallspeed Rally, held in and around Bronkhorstspruit, a town 50 kilometers east of Tshwane, on the border between Gauteng and Mpumalanga provinces. It dates back to the 1850s when a group of voortrekkers settled here. The event was a rather somber occasion because it marked the close of the S2000 chapter in South Africa's rich rally history, though in some ways the chapter was already partially closed. The championship was settled at the Toyota Cape Dealer Rally. Leroy Poulter underwent surgery to remove a brain tumour after suffering with headaches, which worsened after the rally. The operation was deemed a success but put him out of commission. In addition, both Toyota Works cars were sold immediately after the event, so there was no official Toyota presence in the rally for the first time since the mid-1970s. They were, however, promised some privateer representation, with Tiens Hubert and Marie van der Walt in their Salem Group Toyota Auris, hoping to close this episode of their career with a hat-trick on the podium. That was until they blew an engine in testing the weekend before the event and were forced to withdraw. Wilro Dippenaar and Kes Naidu, whose Fiesta was still out of commission after blowing an engine in Cape Town, brought their PZN panel beaters Toyota Auris S2000 in from Namibia. Rounding up the top-class contenders for the Hallspeed Rally were Luke Boerter and Barry White, who decided to pay homage to the S2000 in the Force Fuel Ford Fiesta S2000. On the S1600 front, this championship was also banked at the Toyota Cape Dealer Rally when Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle took their third consecutive win.
Well, the Joburg rallies are pretty similar. This is a hard ground with some sandy areas which you've got to watch out for, especially with our front-wheel drive cars and the heavy sand. It's quite difficult, and then the next corner can be incredibly hard, so hard and slippery. So you just got to watch the surface quite carefully and make sure the notes are good and you know what surface is coming up next.
Behind them was a three-way fight for the runner-up position. The winners of the last two rounds, Richard Leek and Henry Kerner in their P1 Nutrition ATS Ford Fiesta R2, RC Potgieter and Tommy Du Toit, three-time podium finishers in their Lekumuzi Volkswagen Polo R2, also had a fighting chance, as did Paulus Franken and Pierre Aries in their Manito VW Polo R2.
We're looking just to finish, really. If we finish, we should finish second in the championship. Otherwise, RC is not too far behind, so if we have a bad one, he has a good one. Still makes it interesting.
Richard is 6 points ahead of me and Paulus is 3 or 4 points behind of me. So yeah, if I want to come second, Richard must in 2 places behind me and Paulus must in behind me to come second, yeah.
Though Arcia did have his sights on the overall podium, he also had his eye on the Northern Regions Championship, which he had a really good chance of winning. Also in the S1600 lineup was Chris Kurtzer and Greg Godrich in their Electro Thread Toyota Etios, George Smallberger and Chris Brand in the Shield Car Care VW Polo, and finally a few contenders essentially testing the waters. Marco Himmel and Rikus Fourie entered in a second Electro Thread Toyota Etios, and plans seem to be on track for both Himmel brothers to enter next year. Jono van Wyk and Scott Howden, having bought Ernie's Fiesta S1600, took it on a trial run before entering the 2017 series. The rally comprised 4 stages, each repeated to make up 8 stages in total, covering a distance of 146.54 kilometers. Conditions on the weekend were exceptionally hot and dry and dusty. The route provided almost everything from long, straight sections to quite hectic jumps and technical sections. But it was the road surface that was probably the most challenging. There was a lot of loose sand in places and then sudden changes to the hard, slippery stretches and also tight, rutted sections. The thick sand was quite tricky for the S1600s to handle, and for the most part, the rally required intense concentration from drivers and navigators alike. Headquarters of the Hallspeed Rally was at the stunning Godrich Toyota premises in Bronkhorstspruit. The cars lined up for the ceremonial start and were led out by Wilro Dippenaar and Kes Naidu to the first stage. The zigzag stage, in spite of being the shortest of the rally at only 14.8 kilometres, still provided its share of excitement. Luke Buerter and Barry White finished the first stage a mere 2 seconds ahead of Wilro Dippenaar and Kes Naidu.
Stage one was very enjoyable. It was effectively quite simple. Some nice turns, a lot of left and right nines. Nothing too dramatic.
Paulus Franken and Pierre Aries led the S1600 charge, but within kilometres it was obvious they were limping through the stage and were unfortunately forced to retire with a blown engine. That put paid to any hopes they had of a top 3 finish for this season. Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle, though not planning on pushing at all, promptly went out and took the first stage. Marco Himmel and Rickers Fourie, in spite of being a new pair in a new car, took second place, followed by Chris Kutzer and Greg Godrich. They'd been in great form in the latter part of the season and looked to be on track for another great rally. RC Potgieter and Richard Leek, both with everything to fight for, seemed to really struggle to get started.
We lost some time on stage one. We felt it went well. Maybe it's just a possibility that the other cars have a bit more torque going. It felt good. We got into a rhythm, apparently not the right rhythm, but we made up in stage two.
With the championship standings at stake, both pairs would really have to pick up the pace in stage 2 if they wanted to be competitive. Jonathan Van Wyk and Scott Howden didn't have a bad start considering it was their first time out in a car that's new to them. They finished the first stage less than 10 seconds behind RC. George Smallberger and Chris Brand, ending their first season in national rallying, set a target to finish as many rallies as they could in the first year. They had a trouble-free start and were hoping that this would set the stage for a great end to the season. We went from the shortest to the longest stage of the event. Yump was a 24.63 kilometre gravel stage with a bit of water, but otherwise no different from any other stages, with thick sand, ruts and in places slippery gravel conditions. This time the S2000 places were reversed, with Wilro Dippenaar and Kes Naidu finishing 1.3 seconds ahead of Luke Buerter and Barry White, but it was not enough to hold the lead overnight, though there was a scant 0.7 seconds between the two contenders at the end of day one.
I would say we were driving well within our limits. We weren't over the edge. We weren't going wild or anything. There was a couple tricky sections that I think we were just checking. We weren't committing or taking any massive risks. We just wanted to get through today nice and tidily, and we'll see how the day progresses tomorrow. Maybe we'll start pushing a little bit harder towards the end. I see it's quite close between Wilro and us, so tomorrow will tell.
Chris Kutzer and Greg Godrich, after showing such good form in the first stage, rolled in stage 2.
Well, there's a left 8 no cut here. There's a dangerous pipe running under the road. So I got a bit carried away with a no cut. Went a bit wide. It's very slippery on the outside here. We went slightly wide into this ditch and it just rolled over slowly on its roof, you know. That's bad luck. It's the sport. 2 people can't put it back on its wheels. It's just not enough strength. So yeah, we're stuck.
Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle took S1600 stage honours 5 seconds ahead of Richard Leek and Henry Kerner. Marco Himmel and Rickers Fourie stayed in the top 3, but in 3rd place this time. Leek's stage win was enough to put him in 2nd place overnight behind Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle. Marco Himmel and Rickers Fourie were staying really close to Bottrell and finished in 3rd place. RC Potgieter and Tommy du Toit were definitely off the pace, 19.9 seconds off the stage winner and 16.3 seconds behind Leek overnight, and hoping for a better innings in the morning. Though day 1 was short, comprising only 2 stages, there was already fallout. Paulus Franken and Pierre Aries were completely out of the running. Rocky Reyneke and Gert Nienaber had retired their Mitsubishi. Chris Kutzer, Greg Godrich and the JEM Sport team were working frantically in an attempt to re-enter the car on day 2. Day 2 of the Hallspeed Rally started from the Catamaran Club at Bronkhorstspruit Dam. The area served as Park Ferme, where the rally vehicles were secured overnight, and it was also rally headquarters for the day, though servicing was still carried out at Godrich Toyota. With the teams doing their warm-ups and wipe-downs to prepare for takeoff, Chris Coetzee and Greg Godrich were really happy to be back in the running under Super Rally rules and hoping for a better day. Conditions on day 2 were much the same as the first day. The dust was equally as bad, and with only the slightest breeze every now and then, it tended to hang in the air long after the cars had moved on. The first 2 stages were new to the drivers, but from stage 4 onwards, the teams were repeating stages, and times definitely quickened as a result. After leading overnight, Luke Boerter and Barry White were first out on the Zorgfleet 17.33 kilometre gravel stage, sweeping the road. It's a role that no one really enjoys, and the results were telling. With sweeping, the pressure of the Toyota Auris behind them and the wet, dewy conditions, they had an overshoot, which cost them time. Wilro Dupinard and Kes Naidu had a great run and beat the Ford Fiesta by 12.9 seconds. John van Wyk and Scott Howden felt the pain of time and timing in rallying. Everything is run strictly by the clock, and penalties apply if there's any deviation.
I hope we can fix it. We'll have to fix it somehow. I think we're busy losing time at the moment and getting penalties, so we'll see once the car started how it affects our day.
Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle enjoyed another clear run in their Toyota Etios to take their 3rd stage win of the rally. Marco Himmel and Rikus Fourie, also in a Toyota Etios, were having an incredible run and finished less than 10 seconds behind the champions. RC Potgieter and Tommy du Toit in their VW Polo definitely picked up the pace on stage 3 and pulled away from Richard Leek, earning their first top 3 finish of the rally. Richard Leek and Henry Kerner finished 5.8 seconds behind Potgieter and du Toit, possibly giving them the shake-up they needed to stay in the running for the event and the championship. John van Wyk and Scott Howden were happy with a 5th place class finish in the stage after fears of not starting day 2. They were 11.6 seconds behind Leek. George Smallberger and Chris Brand continued their comfortable drive to get to the end of the rally without incident. Chris Coetzee and Greg Godrich are not having any luck this weekend. They rejoined the rally under Super Rally rules, which allows competitors to return to the contest with time penalties, but didn't manage to complete the first stage. Stage 4 was the Johan Els stage. It was dedicated to the memory of our rally route director, who passed away tragically just before the Hallspeed Rally after dedicating more than 35 years of hard work to the sport. It was a 16.51 kilometre gravel stage, and the last one to be run before the repeats began. Wilro Dupinard and Kes Naidu's fantastic result in stage 3 put them back into the lead by 12.2 seconds over Luke Boerter and Barry White. Then Lady Luck deserted them and left them standing on the side of the road, watching the other competitors flying past them. A blown engine dashed any hopes of a rally finish.
12 k's into the stage, we had a small misfire that started and it ended, and we kept on through to the next stages. Came to Service Park, we checked the plug, checked everything, it was fine. And as we entered stage 4, I saw low oil pressure down on the car, flashing on the dashboard. Checked the oil pressure, was around about 2 bar. So I decided it's fine, so it drops it below 1, it's going to be a problem. So just a kilometer further, it was the end of the rally, the car just cut out.
Luke Boerter and Barry White finished the stage without incident and pretty much set the scene for the rest of the rally, as long as nothing went wrong for them. Meanwhile, the S1600 competition was hotting up. Richard Leek and Henry Kerner were able to carry out some adjustments in the Dunlop service zone, which made a significant difference, and they finished ahead of the pack.
The first stage was quite rocky, so we decided to take it quite easy, but I still wasn't happy as the rear end of the car was very loose in the corners. So we changed a bit during service, and now the last stage was a lot better. I think we won that stage. So the car was a lot easier to drive, so we're much happier.
The Guy Bottrell, Simon Vasey-Lyle and Marco Himmel Rikus Fourie contest was turning into a real ding-dong battle, with their stage times identical after 16.5 kilometres and only 0.2 seconds behind Leek and Kerner. That's 0.2 seconds separating the top 3 S1600 cars for the stage.
Day 2 is going alright. It's incredibly hot today, so the temperatures in the car are soaring. But yeah, the stages are pretty quick. Some big jumps out there, so we just got to make sure that we get all the calls correct with the jumps, because some of them are max and some we have to brake for. And other than that, the rally's been quite eventless for us. So yeah, we're one of the first cars on the road, so we just got to find the road and look at the grip and make sure the car stays on the road and there's no lurking rocks in the grass.
With Franken and Aris out of the rally on stage 1, RC Portgieter and Tommy du Toit had no pressure from behind. What they needed to decide was whether to push Leek and Kerner really hard and risk not finishing, or to ease their car home to a third place in the National Championship and secure the Northern Regions title at the same time. Stage 5, Zigzag, was a repeat of the first stage of the rally. Luke Boerter and Barry White finished the stage 30.1 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack and were making sure they made the most of their final outing in the S2000.
Now we're driving tidily, we're staying within limits, we're getting through the stages well without taking any unnecessary chances. So we're just really having as much fun as we can. You know, this is the swan song for the S2000, so we want to make sure we get it to the end, get the full distance in and just really look back on the day and say we had fun. The terrain seems to be typical melee stages. You know, there's a lot of long sweeping sandy corners. You know, a lot of room for forgiveness, if you can say that. But nothing overly technical. A couple rocks in some of the stages, but aside from that, just really beautiful long flowing lines, and we're having a lot of fun.
Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle made sure they held on to their lead by taking their fourth S1600 stage win of the rally in their Toyota Etios.
Yes, we are driving as quickly as we feel comfortable. In areas that we feel good, we're going as hard as we can. And then other areas where there's a bit of risk, we just taking it a little bit easy. Also to preserve the car. It's easy to make mistakes, so we're just watching the car. But in saying that, it's so easy to make a mistake. So, we're trying to keep our concentration up, especially in this heat. It's easy to make mistakes because the guys get fatigued. So, we're just trying to stay as fresh as possible and keep the car in the middle of the road.
Marco Himmel and Rickers Fourie in another Toyota Etios were pushing really hard to keep up with Guy and finished the stage 2.4 seconds behind them. The gap between them and Richard Leek and Henry Kerner in their Ford Fiesta was even tighter, a mere 0.2 seconds. That's a remarkable 2.6 seconds between the top three, indicating just how tough the fight in the S1600 class was.
We've been out of the game for a bit, so yesterday was much just coming back in and just trying to make some find your feet and whatnot. But today it's been going better, still struggling a bit. I mean, it's been a while. But yeah, we're trying to finish in the podium now. Guys are a bit far ahead now to go and chase him, and we're trying to keep position in second because third's coming for us. So, just keep it clean and that's it.
RC Portgieter and Tommy du Toit were 4.6 seconds behind Leek and seemed to be deliberating on their push or hold back decision. Stage 6 was the second run of the longest stage, the 24.63 kilometre Yump stage. Luke Boerter and Barry White, after a completely clean 5 stages, had some alternator problems which threatened to make the final S2000 rally shorter than planned.
We just had an unfortunate complication with our alternator. It threw a belt, and as a result of trying to fix it, we had to take a late penalty getting in. So that put us a little bit behind and lost us a road position. Nevertheless, we're still maintaining our current positioning in the standings. But we've got an additional complication now where the actual alternator's completely seized up. So we really have to conserve our battery and just make sure that we get through to the end.
Richard Leek and Henry Kerner took their second stage win of the day in their Ford Fiesta ahead of Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle. There were only 1.5 seconds in it, not enough to change the overall standings.
Yeah, everything's still going according to plan. We're still here, so that's good. The last few stages we're starting to push a bit harder. Going to try to catch Marco a bit. I think this gap's down to about 6 seconds now. So I think we're going to push quite hard for the next 2 stages.
Marco Himmel and Rickers Fourie in their Toyota Etios finished third in the stage but retained their overall third and second place in class. RCA started to experience handling problems and made a call to switch to a more conservative drive to keep his vehicle in the running for a National Rally Championship podium, as well as a potential win in the concurrently run Northern Regions Rally Championship Series. John van Wyk and Scott Howden had experienced exhaust problems in Stage 5, and in Stage 6 it fell off, and they decided that they were happy with the run they'd had and retired from the rally. Their retirement brought about the only change to the general classification in the last two stages, when it bumped George Smallberger and Chris Brand up to 6th overall and 5th in the S1600 class. Stage 7 was a repeat of the 16.5 kilometre Johanna Els stage. Though taking things relatively conservatively, Luke Boerter and Barry White still managed to keep a fairly consistent 25-second gap from the rest of the field. Richard Leek and Henry Kerner managed to do what they'd planned to and beat Guy Bottrell and Marco Himmel in the stage. In spite of the win, there was still a 6.1 second gap and only one 17.33 kilometre stage to close it. RCA Potgieter and Tommy du Toit kept their pace fairly consistent, really sticking to the plan to get their car home in one piece. Though you wouldn't have said so from this footage. George Smallberger and Chris Brand were the last in class, about a minute behind RCA, loving every minute of the rally and pleased to be still on the road. The final stage of the day was the repeat of the Zorgfleet, the 17.33 kilometre gravel stage. Luke Boerter and Barry White inscribed their names in the history books by taking their maiden National Rally victory, claiming line honours in their specially liveried S2000 tribute colour scheme, which they donned for the occasion. They won 6 of the 8 stages and led the rally from start to finish, barring a brief moment after stage 3 and in spite of alternator problems during day 2.
Yeah, the overall event went as expected. We said we wanted to finish, we wanted to stay within limits, we didn't want to take any risks, none of which we did. Today we had some complications with the alternator, through a belt, then a bearing seized after that. And we literally did the last 2 stages on borrowed power, so we had to swap batteries, and we literally just made it this last stage, but we're glad we did, and we're sitting at the end here with smiles on our faces.
Marco Himmel and Rickers Fourie won their first class stage of the day, ending a superb run together as a new pairing in a new car. Neither Himmel nor Fourie are new to rallying, so their overall 3rd and 2nd in S1600 proved there's something to be said for experience. It also bodes well for 2017. Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle came 2nd in the final stage and won the rally.
It's fantastic to win the final race. We've had a fantastic 3 years ever since we got the Etios. It's performed unbelievably well. We've built an incredible team around us and some amazing sponsors that have helped us to get us along the way. It's really exciting that we managed to produce the goods for 3 years in a row. And we really look forward to next year. We've got some exciting stuff happening next year, and we look forward to prepping the car for next year.
Richard Leek and Henry Kerner had to settle for 3rd S1600 in the final stage, but that was only 0.6 seconds shy of Himmel's stage time and a scant 2.3 seconds from an overall podium position. But the final outcome for them was a double podium, 3rd S1600 in the Hallspeed Rally and 2nd in the National Championship.
No, we're happy with the event. Our goal was to finish the rally and secure our 2nd place in the championship, so we're happy with that. We would have liked to come 2nd overall, or 2nd in the class today, but we pushed hard, but Marco was quick today, so well done to him.
RCA Potgieter and Tommy du Toit brought their Volkswagen Polo home 5th overall after overcoming handling problems. They finished 3rd overall in the S1600 National Rally Championship and also secured a win in the Northern Regions Rally Championship, much to their delight. Rounding out the national finishers, George Smallberger and Chris Brand were thrilled to end their season on a high with a clean run from start to finish. To celebrate 12 great years, we pay tribute to the Super 2000 or S2000. The FIA provided specifications for the vehicles, and the original goal was to reduce the cost of a competitive car. To this end, it used a common control gearbox and drivetrain. Some of the other specifications included that the vehicles were derived from a production model, of which at least 2,500 had been produced the year before. It had a maximum displacement of 2 litres, normal aspiration and a maximum of 8,500 RPM. All-wheel drive was permitted for rally cars with a 6-speed sequential gearbox, front and rear McPherson suspension and no electronic driver aids. South Africa was the first country in the world to run S2000 cars in rallying. Toyota and Volkswagen each built 2 cars to compete in the South African National Rally Championship in 2005. At its peak, South Africa had the highest representation of S2000s in a single country. Volkswagen dominated the class with 6 wins in 12 years, followed by Ford with 4 and Toyota with Leroy's 2 wins. The vehicles will be best remembered for their sound, their handling and the visual spectacle of their performance. But whilst we're sad to see the end of an era, the S1600 class has proved to be a really exciting one, and with the potential of more contenders for next year, promises a lot to look forward to. The National Rally Championship organisers would like to thank Hallspeed, Imperial Toyota, Godrich Toyota, Duxbury Netgear and the Catamaran Club for their contribution to the final event. This is the South African National Rally Championship, proudly brought to you by Dunlop, Ford Performance, Toyota and Volkswagen Motorsport.